The sun had barely risen over the bustling city of Lagos, but Amara Daniels was already awake. The soft chirping of birds outside her small apartment could not mask the anxious pounding in her chest. Today was another day in the endless struggle that had become her life, yet she greeted it with the same quiet determination that had carried her this far. Amara, freshly graduated from the university with a degree in business administration, had once dreamed of boardrooms, strategic meetings, and the thrill of creating her own company. But dreams, she had learned, often collided with the harsh realities of life. Her father, once a strong and unyielding man, lay weakened by a sudden illness that no amount of medicine or care seemed to cure. Each hospital visit, each consultation, had drained not just their savings but the hope in Amara's heart. Sitting on the edge of the worn mattress, she folded her hands and whispered a prayer, the words trembling on her lips. "Father, I will find a way. I promise." Her eyes swept the small room she shared with her younger brother, Samuel, and for a moment, the weight of responsibility threatened to crush her. But Amara had never allowed herself the luxury of despair. She had learned early that life did not pause for sorrow. It demanded resilience, courage, and humility. The phone buzzed on the bedside table, breaking her reverie. It was a message from a temp agency, the only place that had even acknowledged her applications. Her hands trembled slightly as she read the words. Immediate start. Cleaning and household assistance position at the Okoye residence, Victoria Island. Pay commensurate with hours worked. Please respond to confirm. The Okoye residence. The name was familiar. James Okoye. A titan in Lagos's corporate world, young, influential, and known for his extravagant lifestyle. The mansion itself was legendary in whispered conversations. Glass walls reflecting the city lights, polished floors that never gathered dust, and gardens that seemed more like parks than lawns. To work there as a maid, it was far from the career she had envisioned, yet it was the opportunity that would pay the hospital bills. Amara typed a swift reply, her fingers steady despite the whirlwind of emotions inside her. I accept. I can start immediately. By the time she stepped into the sunlit streets of Victoria Island, the city was alive with motion. Cars honked in rhythmic chaos, hawkers called out their wares, and the smell of fried akara mingled with exhaust fumes. But Amara's mind was elsewhere, focused on the mansion that would soon be her workplace, on the strangers who would judge her in ways she had never experienced before. The Okoye mansion rose like a fortress against the skyline, white and gleaming, with ornate gates that seemed to guard not just the house but the very prestige of its occupants. Amara's heart raced as she approached, clutching the small bag that held her few possessions. She took a deep breath and rang the bell. A young man in a crisply ironed uniform opened the door, his expression polite but mechanical. "You must be Amara Daniels," he said. "Please follow me. Miss Bianca will see you shortly." Bianca. The name carried a subtle elegance, even in the way it was spoken. As Amara followed the young man through marble corridors and past golden chandeliers, she could feel eyes on her, not just the unseen staff, but the invisible gaze of someone powerful and possessive. And then she met Bianca Okoye. Standing near the grand staircase, poised as though born to command attention, was a woman of striking beauty. Her skin was flawless, her hair a cascade of dark waves, and her posture radiated pride. But beneath the surface of elegance, Amara sensed something sharper, an edge of judgment, a quiet hostility. Bianca's eyes swept over her from head to toe, and in that moment, Amara knew she had already been measured, found wanting. "You must be the new help," Bianca said, her voice smooth but laced with something cold. "I hope you understand the rules of this house." Amara bowed her head slightly. "Yes, ma'am. I will do my best." Bianca's lips curved into a thin smile. "See that you do. I have little patience for incompetence." With that, she turned and disappeared down another corridor, leaving Amara standing in the marble foyer, feeling simultaneously invisible and scrutinized. It was then that James Okoye appeared, tall, impeccably dressed, and exuding the kind of confidence that made people defer before they even spoke. But he barely looked at her. His eyes were already on his phone, scrolling through emails, lost in the universe of deals and numbers. He nodded once in her direction, and that was all the acknowledgement she received. Amara was shown to a modest room at the far end of the staff wing. It was simple, clean, and functional, a stark contrast to the opulence just steps away. She unpacked her bag, each movement deliberate, rehearsed, and dignified. This was not the life she had dreamed of, but it was the life she needed to embrace, at least for now. Her first day was a whirlwind. Cleaning, organizing, and anticipating the needs of a household she had only seen from the outside, she moved with quiet efficiency. Every polished surface, every folded linen, every careful arrangement of objects was a testament to her education, her discipline, and her respect for those she served. And yet, even as she worked, she could feel Bianca's gaze like a shadow, tracking her every action, measuring her potential as a threat. At lunchtime, Bianca passed by, holding a crystal glass of water like a weapon of elegance. "Be careful with the silverware," she said, voice dripping with subtle venom. I wouldn't want the new girl to ruin anything expensive. Amara smiled politely. I will be careful, ma'am. Bianca's smile did not reach her eyes. I will be watching. The day stretched on, each hour a test of patience and humility. Amara encountered small challenges. A vase that had not been properly dusted, a window that refused to shine, but she faced each with grace, never allowing frustration to show. She reminded herself of the stakes, her father's life, her family's survival, the promise she had whispered to herself that morning. By evening, when the household was calm and James had retired to his private study, Amara sat by the window of her room, gazing at the city below. The light shimmered like a constellation brought to earth, a reminder that the world outside was vast and indifferent. Yet within her heart, a spark of hope flickered. She had survived her first day. She had navigated the subtle dangers of pride and jealousy, and she had done so with her dignity intact. But she could not shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. That in the shadows of wealth and ambition, in the corridors lined with gold and whispered judgments, the true trials were yet to come. And somewhere in the mansion, Bianca's eyes were still sharp, still calculating, still waiting for a misstep. Amara's journey had begun, not with grandeur, not with recognition, but with quiet resilience, steadfast courage, and the unwavering belief that a person's worth was never measured by their circumstances, but by the integrity of their actions. In the days to come, she would learn that the mansion was not just a home, but a battlefield, where ambition clashed with envy, kindness confronted cruelty, and the fate of a family, and perhaps her own heart, hung in delicate balance. The sun set over Victoria Island, painting the sky in hues of amber and rose, and in her small room, Amara whispered a final prayer for the night. Father, I will not fail. Whatever comes, I will stand tall. And with that, she closed her eyes, unaware that destiny was already at work, shaping her path in ways she could never imagine. The next morning, the mansion hummed with the familiar rhythm of luxury. Soft classical music floated from hidden speakers. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee mingled with polished wood, and sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, casting geometric patterns across the marble floors. For most, it was a paradise of wealth and comfort. For Amara Daniels, it was a battlefield cloaked in elegance. Her first task of the day was the main living room, a cavernous space adorned with priceless artifacts, hand-woven carpets, and shelves lined with leather-bound books. Every surface gleamed under her meticulous attention, and yet, as she worked, she could feel the subtle, icy presence of Bianca watching her from a distance. The fiancé's eyes followed each movement like a hawk circling prey, searching for the smallest flaw. Amara did not flinch. She reminded herself. Pride and fear were luxuries she could not afford. Her father's life, her family's hope, and her own dignity demanded patience and grace. Each task, no matter how menial, was a step toward survival and, perhaps unknowingly, toward triumph. Bianca's voice broke the silence like a knife. You missed a spot on the grand piano, she said, her tone sugar-coated but her meaning unmistakable. Amara turned, her expression calm, her hands clasped. I will take care of it, ma'am, she replied softly, then returned to her work. Bianca's eyes narrowed. She had expected a flustered apology, perhaps a nervous tremor, but Amara offered nothing but composure. It was infuriating. A maid who didn't quiver, who didn't beg for approval, that was unheard of. It challenged Bianca's sense of superiority, and for the first time, she realized that this girl might be more dangerous than she appeared. As the morning wore on, Amara moved seamlessly from room to room, her mind never leaving her tasks. She polished, dusted, and organized with a precision that suggested not just training but intelligence. She rearranged books in the study according to subject, repaired a small tear in a cushion without complaint, and even managed to quietly mend a cracked vase before anyone noticed. Meanwhile, James Okoye remained distant, immersed in his work. The occasional glance in Amara's direction was cursory, an acknowledgement of presence rather than a recognition of merit. Yet, even in his distracted state, he felt a faint curiosity. There was something about the way she moved, something deliberate, almost regal in its humility, that caught at the edges of his awareness. He dismissed it as a passing thought, but it lingered. By noon, the tension inside the mansion thickened. Bianca, unwilling to leave her growing irritation unchecked, began setting subtle traps. A misplaced coffee mug, a delicate ornament left where it could easily fall, whispers of tasks that were urgent but intentionally vague. Each attempt was designed to fluster Amara, to make her falter, to prove that a maid could never be more than her station. But Amara anticipated nothing less. She had grown up navigating challenges that required not only patience but foresight. Each small sabotage was met with quiet correction, a slight adjustment, and continued composure. Bianca's eyes widened in disbelief each time her schemes failed. This was no ordinary girl. She was smart, careful, and resilient, qualities that were supposed to exist only in the privileged. Yet here they were, shining in the most unlikely of people. In the late afternoon, a minor emergency presented itself. One of the mansion's chandeliers, an intricate piece that had hung untouched for decades, began to sway dangerously. James, preoccupied in his study, did not notice. Bianca, ever alert for catastrophe, moved with feigned concern, hoping Amara would panic and break something in the process. Instead, Amara sprang into action. Balancing a small ladder with careful precision, she stabilized the chandelier, securing it before anyone could witness a disaster. She stepped back, wiped her hands on a cloth, and returned to her tasks, as if nothing extraordinary had occurred. Bianca's jaw tightened. She clenched her fists behind her back, hating the fact that this maid, this girl from nothing, had just performed a feat she herself would never attempt. And yet, she could not openly attack Amara without arousing suspicion from James, who, though unaware of the subtle battle, respected competence. The day moved slowly toward evening, and the mansion prepared for the week's most important event, James's charity gala, a night of opulence, power, and social influence. Invitations had gone out to the city's elite, and the staff were abuzz with nervous energy. For Amara, it was her first glimpse into a world she had only ever observed from afar, a glittering society that judged not only appearances, but the very essence of a person. Bianca wasted no time in asserting control. "Amara," she said, approaching with the calculated grace of someone who expected obedience, "you will attend to the preparations for the gala. Make sure every detail is perfect. The silver must shine, the tables must be arranged flawlessly, and the staff must move like clockwork. If there is even one mistake, I will know." Amara inclined her head. "Yes, ma'am. Everything will be ready." Bianca's lips pressed into a thin line, but her eyes betrayed unease. Every word Amara spoke carried calm certainty, a quiet strength that made Bianca's sharp commands feel hollow. For the first time, she felt a shadow of fear, not of Amara herself, but of what she represented: capability, intelligence, and resilience that threatened to expose the weaknesses Bianca had always relied upon to maintain control. As evening approached, the mansion buzzed with activity. Chefs coordinated last-minute dishes, servers rehearsed their roles, and the lighting technicians adjusted the chandeliers and sconces to cast the perfect glow. Amara moved through the chaos with grace, directing staff, adjusting arrangements, and ensuring that every corner of the mansion reflected not just wealth, but careful attention to detail. James, now dressed in a tailored suit and preparing to greet guests, finally noticed her presence more fully. He watched as she moved, her every gesture efficient and composed, her focus unwavering. There was a subtle magnetism in her demeanor, a combination of humility and competence that stirred something unfamiliar in him. He frowned slightly, dismissing it as curiosity, yet the sensation persisted. Bianca, sensing his gaze, stiffened. She knew exactly what it meant. James was noticing the girl she had already labeled a threat. Her jealousy burned hotter, sharper, and more dangerous than it ever had. She tightened her lips and whispered to herself, "Not for long. I will make sure she never rises above her place." The night of the gala arrived, and the mansion transformed into a stage of luxury and influence. Guests in designer attire flowed through the rooms, champagne glasses tinkled in celebration, and the air was thick with the scent of expensive perfumes and whispered ambition. Amara moved among them, unseen by most, a quiet presence in a sea of vanity and pride, yet, even in the shadows, she could feel the weight of observation. Bianca's eyes followed her relentlessly, scanning for any imperfection. And somewhere across the room, James's attention flickered, not fully on her, but drawn in subtle, inexplicable ways to the calm, composed figure moving with dignity amid the chaos. Amara felt the tension in the air, but she carried on, her mind focused on the tasks that mattered, ensuring the event ran smoothly, protecting the integrity of her work, and silently, quietly, proving that her worth was not defined by her position, her salary, or the judgment of those who thought themselves superior. That night, as the guests mingled, and the chandeliers sparkled like captured stars, a silent battle unfolded in the mansion. Bianca's envy simmered, James's curiosity grew, and Amara's quiet strength began to ripple outward in ways no one could yet predict. The house, for all its beauty, grandeur, and luxury, had become a crucible, a place where character would be tested, ambitions would collide, and destiny would quietly take note of those who were brave enough to stand tall when the world sought to push them down. And for Amara Daniels, the real journey was only beginning. The grand doors of the Okoye mansion swung open like the gates to a kingdom of wealth and power. Outside, the Lagos night buzzed with the energy of engines, footsteps, and whispered anticipation. Limousines gleamed under the streetlights as well-dressed guests arrived, each eager to see and be seen. Inside, the mansion was transformed into a glittering palace, draped in gold crystal chandeliers casting rainbows across polished marble, and the scent of exotic flowers filling the air. Amara Daniels moved quietly through the corridors, her hands full of neatly folded napkins and carefully arranged table settings. Tonight, she was not the star of the event, at least that was what everyone assumed. She was a maid, a shadow moving behind the grandeur, expected to serve, to clean, to vanish into the background. But Bianca's eyes were sharp, relentless, and predatory. She had spent weeks preparing for this moment, convinced that the arrival of Amara would be the perfect opportunity to embarrass her, to remind the girl of her place. She trailed close enough to whisper sharp critiques. "Make sure the silverware is polished," Bianca hissed, "and do not let anyone touch the centerpiece. One mistake and everyone will know exactly what you are." Amara nodded calmly, her hand steady, her mind focused. There was no fear in her movements, no hesitation in her posture, only quiet, deliberate control. It infuriated Bianca further, who expected panic, shame, or tears. Instead, she found poise and precision, like a warrior in a battlefield she could not comprehend. Guests poured into the main hall, laughter mingling with the soft hum of conversation. James greeted them with the practiced charm of a man who had spent years cultivating appearances. But amid the glitter and pretense, he could not fully ignore the steady presence of Amara. He caught glimpses of her moving among the staff, her composure unshaken by the chaos surrounding her, and he felt a strange pull, curiosity, admiration, something he could not name. The night proceeded with the elegance expected of Lagos elite, but then came the moment that would alter everything. A misstep, small but critical, caused one of the tables to wobble. Crystal glasses clinked precariously, threatening to spill champagne on guests dressed in designer gowns. In the sudden panic, a guest shrieked, and all eyes turned toward the chaos. Bianca's lips curled in satisfaction, certain that the maid would flounder and disgrace herself. But Amara did not hesitate. In a few swift movements, she steadied the table, righted the glasses, and arranged the centerpiece with exacting care. She did it without a word, without the hint of nervousness. It was a simple act, yet in the opulent hall, it shone like a beacon of competence and grace. A hush fell over the room. Guests whispered among themselves, noting the calm figure who had saved what could have been a humiliating disaster. Bianca's smile faltered, her anger barely contained. James, for the first time, turned fully toward Amara, his eyes tracing her movements with fascination. It was then that an unexpected question arose. One of the socialites, curious about the young woman moving among the staff, asked loudly, "And who is that?" She handled that table like a seasoned professional. All eyes now turned to Amara. She paused, a quiet confidence radiating from her. She bowed her head slightly and spoke, her voice steady, carrying through the hall with clarity and conviction. "Good evening. My name is Amara Daniels. I may serve in a humble capacity tonight, but I believe that dignity is not defined by one's position, wealth, or title. Every person here, every cleaner, driver, chef, and caretaker, plays a role in the lives of others. A pilot cannot take off without someone who clears the runway. A lawyer cannot focus if their home is in chaos. We are all connected, and every role deserves respect." A murmur ran through the crowd. Her words were not loud, not showy, but they carried weight. They resonated with truth, striking a chord even among those used to luxury and power. Amara's calm, intelligent presence made her words feel like a revelation. Bianca's eyes burned with fury. This was not what she had expected. The maid, this girl she had sought to humiliate, was captivating the very people she wanted to impress. Her plan had backfired in spectacular fashion. The whispers grew louder. Phones were raised. Snippets of her speech were recorded. By the time the gala's main event began, social media had already begun to buzz. Guests who once overlooked her were now quietly admiring the poise, intelligence, and courage of the young woman who had dared to speak truth in a hall of opulence. James felt an unfamiliar stirring in his chest. He realized, perhaps for the first time, that Amara's strength was not just in her words, but in her presence, the way she carried herself with dignity, even under scrutiny and threat. He could not look away. He had always been surrounded by people seeking his approval or vying for status, yet here was someone who neither sought praise nor feared judgment, and it made him pause. Meanwhile, Bianca's jealousy reached its peak. She had underestimated Amara, dismissed her as a simple threat, and now the consequences were visible to everyone present. She leaned closer to James, whispering, "This is ridiculous. She is just a maid. Why is she stealing the attention?" James, conflicted but intrigued, only shook his head slightly. Something about Bianca's bitterness, her obsession with appearances, suddenly felt smaller. By the end of the night, Amara's words had spread beyond the walls of the mansion. Guests left, carrying with them the image of the young woman whose humility and insight had pierced the veil of wealth and vanity. Social media erupted with clips and quotes, transforming Amara from invisible servant to unexpected star of the gala. Back in the mansion, Bianca paced in a frenzy. Her plans, carefully plotted to protect her status and eliminate a perceived threat, had failed spectacularly. Her obsession with Amara shifted from irritation to something darker, more dangerous. She knew she had to act or risk losing control over both James and the narrative of the evening. And as Amara quietly returned to her duties, unaware of the storm she had provoked, the mansion seemed to hold its breath. The night had revealed her courage, intelligence, and quiet power, but it had also awakened the envy and malice that would soon turn from whispers to action. James, finally, caught her gaze for a moment. Their eyes met, and in that instant, he understood that Amara Daniels was not just a maid, not just a girl trying to survive. She was someone extraordinary, someone who would not be invisible to the world, or to him, ever again. And somewhere in the shadows, Bianca's mind churned, plotting her next move, unaware that fate was already in motion, and that the story of Amara's rise had only just begun. The morning after the gala, the mansion was unusually quiet. The glittering lights and music of the previous night were gone, replaced by a stillness that carried an uneasy weight. Bianca Okoye woke before dawn, her mind racing with fury and panic. Her plan had failed spectacularly. Amara Daniels, the maid she had scorned and plotted against, had captured everyone's attention, spoken with intelligence and dignity, and even captivated James Okoye's curiosity. Bianca could not stand it. Pride, envy, and desperation twisted inside her, forming a plan darker than anything she had imagined before. By the time the staff began their morning routines, Bianca was in the kitchen, moving with meticulous precision. She prepared breakfast with a poison she had procured in secret, a slow-acting concoction meant to incapacitate, but in her mind, it was the final step in ensuring Amara's downfall. Every motion was careful, calculated, and silent, as though the walls themselves might betray her. Once she eats, she'll be out of the way. Bianca muttered under her breath, her voice cold and determined. Then James will see where she belongs, below everyone, below me. Unaware of the danger looming in the kitchen, Amara went about her usual duties, tidying the dining area, polishing silverware, and arranging fresh flowers. She greeted the morning with calm efficiency, her mind focused on tasks rather than the envy swirling around her. The poisoned food sat on the counter, deceptively innocent, a tray of fresh pastries meant to accompany breakfast. Bianca watched from the doorway, hidden by the morning shadows, her eyes gleaming with malicious anticipation. But fate, as it so often did in stories that tested character and morality, had other plans. The family dog, a large golden retriever named Simba, wandered into the kitchen, sniffing curiously at the tray. Before Bianca could react, Simba snatched a pastry and swallowed it whole. Within moments, the dog collapsed, thrashing violently on the floor. A high-pitched yelp escaped its throat, echoing through the mansion. Amara, hearing the commotion, ran toward the kitchen. She found Simba writhing, Bianca frozen in shock, and a faint odor of something unnatural lingering in the air. What happened? Amara asked, panic creeping into her voice, though her mind immediately began assessing the situation. Bianca's carefully constructed composure shattered. I don't know, she stammered, realizing her plot had gone horribly wrong. Her mind raced for an explanation, any excuse to deflect blame. James arrived shortly after, drawn by the noise. He took in the scene, the fallen dog, the panic, the tense figures, and his eyes narrowed. What is going on here? He demanded, his voice sharp. Amara, her calm returning, looked at him and explained the situation as clearly as she could. She noticed the tray of pastries, now abandoned, and her eyes flicked toward Bianca, sensing the truth before anyone else could articulate it. Simba's collapse triggered immediate action. James called the police and medical assistance, demanding answers. Within the hour, authorities arrived, and Bianca's carefully hidden scheme began to unravel under scrutiny. Evidence was collected, statements were taken, and it became painfully clear that the incident had not been an accident. Bianca's panic turned to anger, then to despair, as the reality of exposure closed in around her. Her jealousy, which had once fueled subtle sabotage and whispered insults, had escalated into outright danger. She had attempted to harm Amara, and the consequences were immediate and undeniable. In the presence of law enforcement, Bianca's mask of elegance and control fell away. She tried to argue, to shift blame, to claim ignorance, but the evidence, the poisoned tray, the dog's sudden death, and her frantic behavior spoke louder than any lie she could utter. Amara remained composed, her intelligence and dignity once again standing in stark contrast to Bianca's unraveling. She answered questions calmly, truthfully, and with a clarity that made it impossible for anyone to doubt her honesty. James watched in a mix of disbelief and relief. The woman he had only just begun to notice for her quiet strength had now faced a threat designed to destroy her, and she had emerged unshaken. The depth of her courage, integrity, and resilience became impossible to ignore. By midday, Bianca was arrested. Her obsession, envy, and cruelty had culminated in a public disgrace that left the household, and everyone present shocked. The media, which had already taken notice of Amara during the gala, now reported on the scandal, cementing the young maid's unexpected rise in both fame and admiration. For Amara, the ordeal was frightening, but it also confirmed something she had always known. No act of malice could diminish her worth. She had acted with integrity, protected herself and others, and maintained her dignity under scrutiny and threat. Her life had changed irrevocably, but not because of wealth, power, or influence, because she had remained true to herself. James approached her later that afternoon, after the police had left, and the mansion had returned to a semblance of calm. His eyes were filled with a mixture of awe and gratitude. "You handled yourself incredibly," he said quietly, his voice carrying sincerity that surprised even him. "Most people would have panicked, or worse, tried to hide. You faced it head-on, and, I don't know, I can't stop thinking about how strong you are." Amara, ever humble, smiled softly. "I only did what I had to do. My family, my father. I have responsibilities, and no one's malice can change who I am inside." James nodded, realizing that her words were not just about the immediate danger. They spoke to character, to resilience, and to a sense of morality that he had rarely seen in his world of status and appearances. The household, once dominated by Bianca's subtle cruelty and calculated control, shifted. Staff and family members alike began to see Amara not as a maid to be dismissed, but as a person of remarkable intelligence, strength, and dignity. She was no longer invisible. She was someone whose presence mattered, whose voice carried weight, and whose actions had already made a profound impact. By evening, the sun dipped below the Lagos skyline, casting golden light across the mansion's gardens. Amara sat quietly in her modest room, reflecting on the day's events. The danger had been real, the threat immediate, yet she had survived with her integrity intact. She thought of her father, of the long nights she had spent worrying about his health, and felt a renewed determination. Tomorrow she would continue her work, face the subtle challenges and jealousies of the household, and remain steadfast in her purpose. But she also knew something had shifted, within the mansion, within the people around her, and within herself. Her life was no longer merely about survival. It was about recognition, respect, and the quiet power of integrity. And somewhere in the mansion, James Okoye watched from a distance, realizing that Amara Daniels was not just a maid or a helper, she was a force. A woman whose strength could not be ignored and whose presence had changed the dynamics of his world forever. As night fell, the mansion was silent, save for the soft rustling of leaves and the occasional bark of a replacement dog adopted after Simba's tragic death. Amara closed her eyes, whispering a prayer of gratitude for her father, for her resilience, and for the unexpected twists of fate that had turned her courage into a triumph. She did not yet know what tomorrow would bring, but for the first time in a long while she felt powerful, unshakable, and ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The mansion was finally calm. The chaos of the gala and the shocking morning of the poisoned pastries had left the staff and family shaken, but it also brought clarity. Bianca Okoye, once the unchallenged queen of the house, was now gone arrested, humiliated, and exposed for the cruelty and obsession that had consumed her. For Amara Daniels, life had shifted. No longer invisible, no longer merely a maid working silently in the shadows, she had become a symbol of courage, dignity, and intelligence. News outlets, social media, and the community spoke of her calm bravery and eloquent words at the gala. From the lowest servants to the highest socialites, people began to see her not as a girl of humble means but as a woman of remarkable character. Amara's first thoughts each morning were still of her father. The hospital bills, once a mountain too steep to climb, were no longer her sole concern. James, now fully aware of her unwavering resolve, had quietly arranged for the best medical care. Her father, previously frail and weakened, began showing signs of recovery, his spirits lifted by the knowledge that his daughter had not only survived the trials of the mansion but had emerged stronger. One afternoon, James found her in the garden, tending to flowers she had quietly nurtured during the week. The soft scent of roses mingled with the warmth of the Lagos sun, and for a moment the world outside seemed distant. "Amara," James began, his voice gentle but carrying weight, "I need to say something." Amara looked up, wiping her hands on her apron. She expected compliments, perhaps gratitude, but nothing prepared her for the sincerity in his eyes. "You've changed this household," he continued. "And truthfully, you've changed me. Your strength, your integrity, your way of facing challenges head-on, it's unlike anything I've encountered. I've spent years surrounded by people seeking approval, vying for status, and yet you don't seek validation, and somehow, that makes you the most remarkable person I've ever met." Amara felt her cheeks warm, but she remained composed. "I only did what I had to do," she replied softly. "I couldn't let fear or cruelty dictate my actions. My father, my family, they are my priority. Everything else is secondary." James shook his head, a small smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "No, it's never secondary. What you've done, how you've handled everything, has shown me what real courage and integrity look like. And, Amara, I realize now that I want you in my life, not just as someone I notice, but as someone I respect, admire, and care for deeply." Her heart skipped, but she kept her voice steady. "James, I never came here seeking anything beyond work and survival. But I've always believed that the right people recognize character over status. If your care is genuine, I will not dismiss it." In that moment, the mansion, once a place of tension and envy, felt different. Light seemed to reflect off the marble floors more softly, and the garden's roses seemed brighter. Amara realized that her courage had not only saved her life and her family, but had also opened the doors to respect, trust, and even love. Meanwhile, the aftermath of Bianca's schemes was felt throughout the household. Staff who had previously whispered doubts or participated in minor intrigues now openly admired Amara. Guests who had attended the gala sent messages of encouragement, praise, and even offers to support her dreams. For the first time, the world seemed to recognize her value, not for her status, but for her character. Weeks later, her father returned home from the hospital, healthy and strong enough to walk into the sunlit garden himself. He embraced Amara, tears in his eyes, pride in his voice. "You've done it, my daughter," he said, holding her close. "Not just for me, but for all of us. You've shown that courage, integrity, and love are more powerful than wealth, envy, or cruelty. You've risen above everything that sought to break you." Amara smiled, feeling the weight of her journey lift slightly. Her father's recovery, her newfound recognition, and the respect of those around her reminded her that struggle, when met with resilience, could be transformative. James, now a constant presence by her side, offered more than support. He became a partner, an ally, and eventually, someone she could trust fully. Their bond was not sudden or reckless. It had grown organically, forged in shared experiences, respect, and the acknowledgement of each other's strengths. Over time, the mansion became a different place. Where tension and envy had once ruled, there was now harmony and respect. Amara, though still fulfilling her duties with humility, was also allowed to pursue her ambitions. James encouraged her education, her career plans, and her dreams of making a difference in the community. She became not just a helper, but a partner in shaping projects, initiatives, and charitable causes that uplifted those often overlooked. And Bianca? The lessons of envy and obsession were carved into the public record. She remained in custody, a cautionary tale whispered among socialites and staff alike, a reminder that cruelty, malice, and obsession ultimately destroy those who harbor them. One evening, as the Lagos sun set in brilliant shades of amber, Amara and James walked through the garden together. The roses swayed gently in the breeze, and the city beyond the mansion shimmered in the distance. "You've changed everything," James said quietly, taking her hand. "Not just me, not just this household, but the way people see what truly matters." Amara smiled, feeling the warmth of triumph settle in her chest. "I've only done what anyone should, stood firm in the face of envy, worked with honesty, and loved without expecting reward. That's the only way to live with peace." James nodded, his gaze meeting hers with admiration and affection. "Then let us continue that together," he said. "Not just in love, but in life. Together we can create something better, for us and for others." And so, the maid who had once been underestimated, mocked, and threatened rose above her circumstances. She had faced envy, danger, and the trials of a world obsessed with status, and emerged stronger, wiser, and beloved. Her father recovered, her family thrived, and her own journey of love and respect began, rooted in the resilience that had carried her through fire. The moral of her story spread quietly, like the whisper of wind through the garden. True worth is not measured by wealth, beauty, or social standing, but by courage, integrity, and the strength to stand firm in the face of envy and cruelty. Amara Daniels, once a maid in a grand mansion, had become a symbol of triumph, proving that destiny could not be stopped by jealousy, and that the quiet strength of the human spirit shines brightest when tested by fire. The city of Lagos, full of ambition, intrigue, and dreams, would remember her story for years to come, a tale of humility, courage, and the undeniable power of rising above adversity. And as night fell, the mansion lights twinkled like stars, reflecting a truth that would endure. The maid who was almost destroyed by envy had become the woman who inspired everyone, and her future, bright, unshakable, and deserved, had only just begun.